In December of last year, an article was written by Sarah Whitten as the result of a trend she was observing regarding the high sales of products based off the Star Wars character Grogu from The Mandalorian, who you might know better as Baby Yoda. She describes this specific set of consumers as kidults in her writing, where she makes the following statements. Kidults, who tend to spend more time on toys, have a great fondness for cartoons, superheroes, and collectibles that remind them of their childhood. They buy merchandise such as action figures, Lego sets, and dolls that might typically be considered for kids. However, in recent years, toy makers have created product lines just for these consumers, realizing that the demand is high for this generation of adults who still want to have fun. I'm opening this video up with this statement because
meat splat.
Animal sidekicks sell merchandise. It's hard to argue against that, especially from a company like Disney. I know it's easy to levy the complaint that everything's lazily included for cash nowadays, but the sentiment "it's just made for money" can only go so far when it comes to criticizing something. However, with the recent Disney and Pixar lineup, I had to ask myself why my enthusiasm towards animal sidekicks like Sebastian, Mushu, and Maximus is much stronger than something like Splat.
It's supposed to like splat on things like
Now, before we get into this, I want to briefly explain to you guys what I mean by an animal sidekick. A character that fills this role is typically a non-human character that exists as a companion to the often human protagonist. That seems pretty self-explanatory, but I bring this up because I would categorize someone like Phil from Hercules in that subset, despite technically not being an animal. Creature, if you will. However, if a character exists as a comic relief in a world occupied by other talking animals like Timon and Pumbaa, I wouldn't use that label since they're equal in terms of their dynamics with the other characters. They're not Simba's pets, they're just his gay dads. Most of them exist to be light-hearted comic relief characters that follow the main characters throughout their entire journey. And yes, they sell merchandise really, really well most of the time.
With crunchy apples in every McDonald's Happy Meal, I can feed my wild side and get an even wilder Stitch toy.
Sometimes you can have ones that just feel like they're there to be cute, like Djali from Hunchback of Notre Dame or Miko from Pocahontas. They have their moments, but you can more or less cut them from the story with very little change. I'm not saying they should be absent. I mean, Miko's pretty much the only thing I like about the movie he's attached to, but it's definitely possible. When it comes to the most memorable ones to come out of Disney, there's a lot you can go with. One easy way they were able to make them enduring in the Renaissance was by making them talk. Kids love talking animals, otherwise we wouldn't get entire movies about them. Because of how successful the casting of Robin Williams as Aladdin was, a lot of them tended to be voiced by A-list actors like Eddie Murphy, Gilbert Gottfried, and Danny DeVito. A voice can be just as much of a curse as it is a blessing, though. I may be one of the few people that likes the crocodile from Princess and the Frog, but I also have a lot of friends who don't vibe with his humor or just think he's annoying. Whether or not a character's making you laugh is entirely subjective, but part of the reason why I think these casting choices worked well in particular is because of how they managed to bring the characters to life. Iago is grumpy, loud, and sarcastic, and the voice really enhances all of these traits. Take it away or replace him with another actor, and it's not the same character. That isn't the only thing that makes them enduring, though. Designs are essential in making characters feel alive and suspending our disbelief, which is best accomplished when using the medium of animation. I wish I had placed stronger emphasis on this in my live-action Little Mermaid review, but there's no quicker way for a mainstream movie to get on my bad side than with crappy-looking CG characters. I'm sure Daveed Diggs is trying his hardest to make this work, but in live action, Sebastian is barely allowed to be expressive, making everything he does and say feel monotonous. Compare this to the original animated counterpart with his big round eyes and lips and whoppers, apparently.
I sound like Caruso, and these whoppers bob out!
The amount of expressiveness in his face and body movements paired with his Jamaican voice and singing makes her one of the most iconic and popular characters to ever come out of Walt Disney Animation. You buy into his constant paranoia about all things human and his everlasting love for the sea because of this. So these are a few aspects that make up good animal sidekicks, but there are others that can make them stand out just as much. Take Mushu from Mulan. Dragons are typically depicted in media as large, powerful beasts. They're thought to bring good luck and prosperity in Chinese culture, which this movie takes direct inspiration from. So Mulan's animal sidekick is a dragon, but they do a fun little subversion with that concept. What's supposed to give her good fortune as she takes her father's place in the army is actually just a scrawny little twig who gets bullied by all her ancestors. That makes his inclusion already funny enough on its own, in addition to all the fire jokes he's got. You see what I did there? Unique concepts can play a major role in the endurance of a character, sometimes without having to say anything at all. Maximus from Tangled is a great example of this. Exaggerated body language to make up for his lack of speech and a hilarious rivalry with Eugene gene. Star power isn't always necessary to make these characters stand out. And then there are times when the writers will go the extra mile, which leads me to the most important thing that comes with making an animal sidekick work. One of my absolute favorite tropes in all of fiction is when the characters that are designed to be cute and cuddly ultimately end up being the emotional core of their respective stories. You already love them because they're goofy little fuzzballs, but when you give them additional layers of depth, it makes you fall in love with them even more since it allows you to connect with them on an emotional level on top of them being, well, adorable. And Disney has done this trope exceptionally well on numerous occasions. Going back to The Little Mermaid, the real Little Mermaid, all three of the non-human characters have different personality traits that deeply affect their relationship with Ariel. Sebastian is anxious about the human world in a lot of numerous ways, but urging Ariel to remain in the sea stems from genuine concern which feeds into all of their interactions. But their dynamic starts to shift once she becomes human and he realizes that she's counting on him not to tell Triton about the deal she made, which gradually makes him warm up to the human world a little bit more. On the flip side, you've got Flounder, who enthusiastically supports her despite being scared of some of the dangerous situations they get in, and Scuttle, who serves as a way of indirectly connecting her to the surface land and getting her interested in all of its relics. These traits are charming enough on their own, but they're also essential to enduring us to the dynamic every single one of them have with Ariel. They all play a crucial role in her experience as a mermaid and on dry land, and it makes the bond they have with each other feel authentic. There's a deeply personal connection that's present. Of course, this isn't always the case for all animal sidekicks out there, but it doesn't always have to be dramatic for it to work this well. Sometimes just watching them struggle and help out the heroes can be enough, like with Heihei from Moana. After all, she's the only person that treats him with any decency. She doesn't toss him aside when he almost causes her to drown in the ocean, and the gag about him eating everything in his path has narrative relevance when he stops the green Chaos Emerald from falling into the ocean. Not only is that great payoff in its own right, but it showcases just how good of a team the two of them are together. The lack of a dramatic through line is made up for with an entertaining and well put together set of interactions, making for a great duo. And speaking of great duos, I absolutely cannot let this be the topic of this video without diving into what I consider to be the best. Stitch is everything you could possibly ask for out of an animal sidekick. Giving him an emotional backstory and making him initially start out as self-destructive, acting as a direct foil to Lilo given her current situation, allows for such a tangible relationship progression that allows the two of them to organically find solace with each other, in addition to all of their funny moments. The movie commits itself to making these two stand out together, and it more than succeeds. Despite all the differences across these many different characters, what makes them the most memorable is how you buy into the deep connections and bonds that they have with each of their respective leads. So with all that being said, I think it's a little disappointing that we went from having so many amazing sidekicks that came out of this studio, ones that were often just as iconic as the leads of the films that they were a part of, to splat.
Aha!
A lot of Disney's recent animal sidekicks have been standing out less and less as time goes on. I want to hold characters like Socks and Tuk Tuk and the stupid blue blob to the same standard, but they all feel a lot more manufactured and just like they're part of a checklist. They've all got the cutesy aesthetic, they all have their moments that get chuckles out of me, but it hardly feels like the strength they have with their partners is there. I don't feel any emotions when it comes to the bond between Ethan and Splat because he more or less exists as a background character. Same goes for Tuk Tuk and Raya, they just feel like they're there for the ride. And while I do think Socks is a mild standout in Lightyear, I think a lot of that has to do less with the bond he has, and more so him being a distraction from how boring of a character his partner is. Reminds me of another movie, actually. I'm not gonna pretend like this is some epidemic that's negatively impacting their films that needs to be immediately rectified or anything. After all, it's not like the absence of an animal companion would have that much of an impact. But when you take into consideration everything I said about the ones I consider to be the best, it makes the ones that do still exist in their movies much more underwhelming. People are probably gonna buy toys of these guys one way or another because they're cute and cuddly, but there are many that have continued to stick with me as I've become an adult. And that stems from them going beyond the bare minimum with their roles in the story. Nowadays, there's a severe lack of variety and inventiveness. It's the same character that occupies a different body each time. All I'm saying is that if Disney gets their hands on the right people and focuses less on analytics with them, which is what it feels like more and more, they can make something or someone that the next generation of kids can look back on and hold on to just as much as so many of the beloved furry friends that came before. Because at the end of the day, the best elements of their movies, whether it be catchy music, breathtaking sequences, or timeless and beloved characters, are the ones that transcend past their intended audience. Anyways, be sure to stand the GOAT for their next movie, Wish. If that trailer is anything to go by, then I know for sure that he's going down in history.
I'm talking. I am talking. Ha! Who knew my voice would be this low?
Thanks for watching, Minnows, and I'll see you again at the edge of the water.